Hey everybody, welcome to Adobe Live. My name is Emily and we have an amazing guest. Whitney Anderson is with us for the next 90 minutes to do graphic design and small business branding. So Whitney, welcome. We're so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, so we have some amazing stuff lined up. Do you want to walk us through what we're going to be working on and then just get into it?
Yeah, so my main bread and butter of what I do is branding, working with a lot of small businesses, restaurants, local makers, artisans. So this is my website, a small sampling of what I have done for folks in the past. There's a few branding projects on here, some packaging. I've also been doing a lot of murals and larger scale stuff lately. So yeah, today I'm actually going to be working on some branding for my parents. They have several business ventures that they've been playing with over the past many years. And they're both retiring this coming month. So they are going to be spending more time in their new business ventures, and I'm going to give them a fresh look for those things.
I love that. Well, I'm seeing some people joining in chat. They're saying hi on YouTube and on Behance. So we're super excited that you guys are here. If you want to be a part of the conversation, feel free to drop any questions, comments in the chat, and we will incorporate those into the stream. But
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started here. The main things that I want to do for them today are like a couple of logo options, color palette, fonts, some maybe business cards or postcard, info card type of thing, just various little print collateral that we can tie in with their branding. So I've got a couple of things here that I'm going to open up in Illustrator. This is some hand lettering that I have done for them. I may pop into Photoshop a little bit later to show you kind of how I got this lettering into the vector format for using on logos. Kind of just waiting to see if Photoshop decides to open up for us or not. So this is one that I did earlier. And yeah, we may pop in there later so I can show you how I did this. So these are just a couple of hand lettered um, pieces that I want to try out and use for their logos. So Anderson is our last name, their last name. So they're going to be using that name for all of these business purposes. So I have here just a few little lettering styles that I grabbed, and then I'm going to try also a few just typed out fonts as well to see what feels right. I'm going to pull these into just a new file real quick.
and do you typically lean towards more like hand letter, custom typefaces, or a mix of the two? Do you have a go-to?
I I have been doing a lot more hand lettering in recent years. It wasn't really something that I started doing on purpose. It's just that it's something that I enjoyed a lot. So um, I started incorporating it slowly into my branding projects, and I started getting asked for it more. So yeah, it kind of came organically, we'll say.
That's cool. These look great.
Thank you. So yeah, these were done. I'm gonna ungroup these so I can play with them a little bit more. Um, my art boards are generally a little chaotic at the beginning. Just make these a little bit smaller so I can fit them all on here. I do think Photoshop is opening for us too, so that is lovely. Just going to give it a minute and then I'll pop over there. I have some more illustrations that I drew, and I want to pull those in here too. So these were both done with marker. These were with a pen. And usually, so these I drew all on paper. And as you can see, they're a little bit wonky. So usually what I'll do right away is pull some ruler guides and try and get things straightened out. I did make a couple of alternate letters, like I did an alternate A. The S, I might just choose one of these S's, and same with the N. and duplicate that. Uh, we're just gonna straighten some of these out real quick.
Chat has a question for you. Are you
Sure.
creating typefaces from scratch or how do you approach that? And then do you sell your typefaces?
Yeah. So they are, I guess I would say from scratch in a sense. I have so many vintage packaging pieces that I have collected from thrift stores, estate sales over the past many, many years. And I go through those a lot, but so I feel like I have kind of an archive already built up in my mind of styles that I really like. When I'm starting a project, I try not to look into too much source material just because I don't want it to be too closely reflected in whatever I'm designing. But anytime that I'm not currently working on a project, I'm filling my brain with as many references as I can. Um, so things kind of get convoluted in my brain. But yeah, I for this one specifically, going back to the question, I wanted something that was definitely had that like hand-drawn textural feel. I do have a couple of script options here, but for the most part, I was already kind of envisioning something all caps and something with like a good thickness to it. You'll see when I pull up the illustrations in just a couple minutes, I wanted something um, that fit with the illustrations really well because I feel like the illustrations were the most important part of this branding project to me. So I wanted the type to be something that fit well with that. Okay. I think, fingers crossed, Photoshop is going to cooperate with us. So let's go bounce back into the illustrations.
I have faith in Photoshop. It's going to
I
happen.
know my computer has also like calmed down a bit. It was starting to sound like a jet plane, like it was gonna take off. So
It's
we'll
recovering.
see. Yes. Yay.
Woohoo!
It worked. Okay.
Amazing.
So this is a page of illustrations that I drew a few days ago. Um, I just did this on paper, tracing paper. This is a technique that I use in a lot of my branding projects. I would say almost all of my branding projects have some element of like a hand drawn something or another. So what I'm doing here is basically turning this page of illustrations into vector files, which I know there are a ton of ways that one can do that. This is just a process that I've used over the years. If you look at any of my other Adobe live streams, you'll see some version of this technique in there. So what I'm going to do first, basically what we want to do is get this photo to be just the purest black, purest white, just super, super high contrast. You can use a scanner if you have one. You can, like, I just took a photo of this on my phone and pulled it in here. So you don't have to have super, super high technology. Um, this is what we're doing here is basically a version of like image trace in Illustrator, but this technique gives you a lot more control. So I'm over here in my brightness and contrast. I'm going to go to some other adjustments just to make sure that all of the black ink on here is super black and everything else, all the white is completely white. So I can get that really, really high contrast.
These are
Okay,
gorgeous illustrations, by the way.
thank you.
Lovely. Yeah.
Um, Thanks. So what you'll see here, I guess I didn't even really talk about it that much. But my parents, they are into fossil hunting. So you'll see a bunch
Oh,
of fossils here. They like buy and sell antiques and vintage goods at flea markets. So you'll see a little smattering of pieces here. My mom weaves. She has a giant floor loom. So you'll see woven pieces here. My dad owned a coin shop for over 40 years. So they do coin shows. You'll see some coins, some gold and silver over here. And then the pumpkin farm. So we've got some dry gourds down here too. So we're going to use these in a few different ways throughout the branding. Just wanted to have something that reflected all of the different parts of all their businesses.
Those are very unique interests. I think I haven't heard of fossil hunting and pumpkin growing.
Yes.
It's amazing. They can do it all.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So what I am going to do here, I've got my adjustment layers here. So you can see when I zoom in, everything is just black and white, really crisp. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten my image now. So you can do that somewhere up here in the panel, but I always just do Command E. I do the hotkey or the shortcut for that. Okay. I am also going to make this image a little bit larger, just so that I can make sure I'm getting as much of that detail and information as possible. So go to image up here, image size, and then I always just work with the resolution right here. So it's 72 right now. We're going to make this 300. Let it do its thing for a minute.
Photoshop is getting nervous on us again.
Thankfully, this part, I'm used to this part taking a moment. So I'm like, oh, okay, this is normal. It's just working. All right. The next step in this, so you can see like pixelation here. These are going to be really, really tiny when they're on a piece of paper. So when you zoom out, you're still seeing a lot of that, the integrity of that line work is still there. But one other thing that I'm going to do to kind of make these feel a little bit smoother, I'm going to go up here to filter under blur, Gaussian blur. Whoa, way too much. Usually I keep this at, I'll change it to like 5 pixels, 5-ish pixels. We just want to blur some of those like pixelated edges a little bit. So yeah, I'll say 5. I always put the preview on just so you can see what you're doing while you're doing it. Hit OK on there. Let it do its thing again. All right. And then I guess one of the last steps in this process, once you've done that blurring, you'll go up here to your adjustments or wherever you keep your adjustments. I always think it's interesting how people have their workspaces set up. So one more time, we're just gonna pull these adjustments to the middle. That just cleans those lines up a little bit, makes them a little bit smoother so that when we grab the paths of these lines, it's just, they look a little bit nicer. Okay, so we did that. I'm gonna flatten this one more time. And then we can grab our paths. So to do that, I will do select color range, and you can just click on any of the black, the part that you want to be selected. So click on that. Okay. Give it a second to grab everything, especially with a sheet that's this full of illustrations, like all of the tiny little nodes that it has to grab. It sometimes will take a minute. So I've got everything selected. It's got the little dotted lines around everything. I'll come over to my paths panel, and all the way down at the bottom, I think, yeah, it's the middle one. It's like the circle and there's 4 points around it. I don't even know what most of these tools are called. I just know what they look like when I use them. It's something about work path, but it's the circle and it has 4 points around it. So it is working on that. There we go. That didn't even take as long as I thought it would. So now we have a little node or a path on all of our illustrations, and we can save this as an Illustrator file and then open it in Illustrator. So to do that, I'll just go up here to File, Export, and then down near the bottom is Paths to Illustrator. And yeah, I just want to save as my work path. I'll hit OK. I'll save it into my folder with the other pieces that I did earlier to prepare Adobe Live. Put it in my paths folder here, illustrations, and save. All right. We are going to, usually I'm bad at closing things out, so I'll just leave this running in the background, but Photoshop has done a lot of hard work today, so we're gonna let her be. So I
Little nap.
will, yes, exactly. Gonna just save my file and then we will be done with Photoshop. She did what we needed her to do.
She put in the half day work. She can go home now after
Yes,
lunch.
exactly, exactly. Okay, she is saving. Perfect. Okay, so now we can open these other pieces in Illustrator. So this is what I was doing at the very beginning of the stream with that lettering. So when you open it, it just looks like a blank piece because it's just your paths. It's not colored in yet. So this is one that I saved earlier. This is just some like shading that I want to maybe have for my illustrations. Just make it any color. Um, and then you'll see here that it makes every single path that same whatever color you chose. So after I color everything, I'll go into my pathfinder um, little toolbar over here and hit the exclude pathfinder tool, and that'll pop out all of your interior pieces that weren't supposed to be there. So these are all of my like shadows or background colors that I might use a little bit later. And then this is the one that we just finished making in Photoshop. So I'll color that. I'll just go black. And then my Pathfinder tool, hit the exclude, let it do its thing. And then we have a bunch of vector illustrations that still have a lot of really great, like gritty texture to them. So again, this is just like a really intense way of doing image trace, but I've found, like I said, that this way gets you so much more control over how much detail or how little detail you get. Um, and if you zoom in really, really close, like there's still some weird jagged edges here, but I'm never going to be using these illustrations that large. So for my purposes, these are perfect. Okay, so this is a huge, basically flash sheet of illustrations right now. So I'm just going to copy this over to my working document, which I'm going to save before I forget. Okay. So these are all in one big clump, as you can see right now. I'm just going to make this artboard really, really big so we can keep everything on the white background. So these are just a big clump right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and ungroup them. So again, I don't even remember how to do that up here, but I think Command Shift G is the key command for that. Yes, Command Shift G. Um, and then I am going to pull a couple of these that I want to work with for sure, and kind of put them in a separate little area. So just going to grab this duck and group the duck so that all of these little pieces stay together. Just gonna Command G a bunch of these little things, maybe a couple fossils, Command G, so that when I go to grab them again, that is now all one piece. Do this.
Chat is very excited about this new workflow, and I agree. I usually use image trace, and I feel like you do lose certain integrity to the lines or just little details. So this is a really great workflow. So thank you for showing us this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something that like as I walk through it, it feels like a lot more steps. But once
But
you know it, like the whole thing, if I wasn't talking through it, takes me like 2 minutes to do. Like it's really pretty speedy once you learn the workflow for sure.
definitely.
Okay, so I might come back and grab a couple more of these later, but for now, I just want to have a few that I can play around and work with. So we've got like what, five, six right here, maybe a couple more of these small ones. Yep.
Is
Okay.
there a backstory of how your parents got into fossils, or did you just happen upon them?
So we live in a really actually like, or they live now where I grew up, where they currently still live, um, in the Midwest is a very, very famous location for certain types of fossils.
Wow.
And I think we always had known that they were there, but it wasn't until maybe 5 years ago or so that they did like I think they're just called field trips, with the local like fossil club. And we did one as a family and they fell in love with it. And we're like, this is really cool. This is really
Yeah.
fun. So they became club members themselves. And now they go out, they fossil hunt, they crack open their own fossils.
Wow.
They also have started like selling fossils that they find at rock and gem shows. So yeah, it's a really cool hobby,
Yeah.
that I think really is pretty obscure. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. We have gone, my husband and I have gone a few times, since they've started doing it, to go just visit for the day and see what we can find.
That's super exciting. It's a surprise every time, right? I mean,
Exactly.
their
Yeah.
nature too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so back to design. So what are we doing now?
Yes.
We are cleaning
Okay.
up, getting a baseline.
Yeah. So I mean, this is still really rough. If this is the style that they decide to go with, like I'm gonna present them a few options. If this is the style they decide to go with, I will come in here and I will actually just rebuild this lettering in Illustrator so that I don't have as much of this like weird bumpy stuff going on. Like since I just drew this with a pen, like it was pretty, I don't know, all over the place. Um, but yeah, since I don't know if they're going to go with this one or not, um, I don't want to put that time in up front. So if they end up liking this style, um,
Seems like we may have taken a
uh-oh.
pause here. There you are. Okay, you're
Oh,
back.
okay. I just
I,
realized that I froze. Okay.
no worries.
Where did I cut out there?
That you would come back and clean it up, I
Oh,
think.
yes. Okay. So I will come back and clean this up if they decide that this is the lettering style that they want to go with for the logo. I just don't want to sink too much time into these, if it's not going to end up getting used.
Right.
So, however, if this were for a client project, and this was an option that I wanted to present, I mean, not that my parents aren't clients, but it's different.
Yeah.
Um, if this were for a like a true client project, I would actually clean this up fully, how it would look before I would present it to them. But I just want to kind of give them an idea of what it would look like basically right now.
And when you come back to clean it up, would you be
Mhm.
rebuilding it completely with the pen tool, or how do you usually go about that?
Yeah,
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 okay.
I would.
Very nice. Someone asked a question earlier in chat about hierarchy and what's
Mhm.
your approach to hierarchy?
Ooh.
It's a broad
So,
question, so do with
yeah,
that as you will.
absolutely. Yeah. So when it comes to branding, usually most branding projects that I'm working on have a few different elements to the logos. So there's like the logo type, and then maybe some type of little illustration or icon that gets paired with the logo type. Some logos have maybe the city where the or the location that the business is located. So yeah, those are all things, just depending on what pieces I'm working with, I will lay maybe 10 options out and see what feels best, see where my eyes go first, see what the flow is of each of those things. When I'm thinking about something like a print material or something else, kind of same thing. I'll first lay out all of my pieces that I'm going to be working with. So maybe it's a business card or some kind of postcard or note card or something. I'll get all my pieces on the page, and then I'll lay out several different options and see, where does my eye go? Does this make sense? If it's telling a story, does it tell the story in the proper order?
Yep,
Um, yeah.
perfect.
So what I'm doing right now, I'm just gonna build a couple little color palettes for myself. So a lot of these things, if I'm thinking about them, fossils, brown, dirt, brown, coins and gold and silver, very neutral color, metallic, but still neutral colored. If I go back and look at my full set of illustrations, gourds, these are all like dry gourds that my parents sell that people make crafts and like birdhouses or other things out of. So once they're dried, various shades of brown and tan. So a lot of the things that they are working with and selling are very neutral in color. So I think what I will do is try to stay true to that, while creating a little bit more interesting color palette. Vintage goods can be a huge range of colors, even the weaving that my mom does, um, wide range of colors. So we'll do some more neutral and then some that has a little bit of more pop of color to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and start color picking here. Usually my color palette creating is a little uh, just like throw things at the wall and see what sticks. So I have an idea in mind, and I will just start pulling bars of color like this, or, squares, circles. I'll just make shapes of color, um, start pulling colors in and see what I like later. So, like what I'm doing right now, I land on a color. I'm like, oh, I like that. I don't necessarily think that all three of these colors should be in a color palette together, but maybe this yellowy mustard color would go in a palette. And then this darker one would go in a different palette. So right now, I'm just gonna swatch some colors that I like and that I think would work. And then I'm going to separate them into a few different palette options, to show to my parents.
It's always interesting to see how people build out their color palettes in the process. So I'm taking notes.
Ah, I mean, yeah, I feel always very aware and conscious of my workflow when I do something like this. I'm like, oh, this is kind of chaotic, isn't it? Like,
Like
you
you do it like
know,
this too,
to see
right?
what happens. Yeah. Or even just like the number of ways that there are to
Yep.
do things. Like people are like, "Oh, you do that? Like you could do that like this instead." I have actually learned a lot of things from doing my live streams, just people commenting in the chat and
Like,
they're
yeah,
like,
do
"Oh,
this.
there's an easier way to do that. You can just do this." And I'm like, "Oh, I never knew that before." Like that's great.
Does it stick with you afterward?
Uh, I don't know. I guess I can't even think specifically
Right,
of
yeah.
what the thing was last time, but it was like, I feel like sometimes you can just be polite and you're like, "Oh yeah, I'll totally use that." And then you never do. But I do remember being shocked at whatever the tip was, and I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I feel like I've either completely forgotten what it was or it has just become now so ingrained into my workflow
Right, you don't
that
know the
like
difference.
it's now just part of my workflow. Yeah.
That's amazing. Sometimes I feel like I discover a tool, I'm like, that's amazing. And then I'm in a hurry the
Mhm.
next time and I totally forget, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Well, there's so many
yeah.
tools being created in all of the updates now. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I even find the time to learn what all of these things do? Like, this is amazing.
Right. These are looking good. I'm liking these palettes. We got some browns, some blues, some greens.
Yeah. Thank you. Maybe more like reddish or rust colored browns. It's too red. I also feel like when I'm doing branding projects, I do tend to create really large color palettes. There'll be once in a while where I'm like, these are your three brand colors. But I feel like for the most part, I send off branding packages with like six or so brand colors.
Okay.
Like, I just want you to have
All
options.
of
I
them.
like, yeah. Or, maybe there's three or four main colors, but then you've got some little accent colors that you can use from time to time.
I think that's so helpful. I feel like there's some brands, yeah, where it's very, very limited, but I do see
Yeah.
more success when a brand is given, a good swatch of colors.
Hmm.
Because I
Hmm.
think you need that, per season, per product, like you just need that
Totally.
variety. Yeah.
Okay. I do want a few more, like, I guess, kind of light colors. I feel like these colors are always very tricky for me. I'm like, I don't want it to be, I like light colors because I want things that they can use that have good contrast with their darker colors, but I don't want it to just be white. But even tans or creams, like this one, I feel like is reading, hopefully you guys can even see that. It's pretty light against the white. It's like just reading very, very yellow against the screen or against the white on the screen. um, Sometimes I feel like I've done a cream that I feel like looks really pretty on a different color, like on this blue, but then it's like too pink or something. Like
On
I feel
its
like
own.
this looks really pretty on the blues, but yeah, once it's
Yeah.
on white, it's like, oh, no, pink. That's too pink.
Like when you go to pick out paint and you're like, how many shades of white can there be?
Yes,
And then you're like, wait,
exactly.
no, they all do need to be here.
Yeah. Yep.
These are like amazing. And especially
Thank
just
you.
using the eyedropper tool like this, I am blown away.
Thank you. I will also go into like color books sometimes too to like pull preset like
Sure.
actual colors. Because one thing I do at the end of or not the end, but like nearing the end of the branding process too, before I get any colors set in stone. Because I feel like, when you're picking things, like I've got this black right here, um, I go and make sure that all of the like CMYK values are whole numbers. Um,
Oh,
because if you're just eyedropper tooling these, like
you
this
get
one's
percent. Yeah.
33.33 and like all the rest of these are whole numbers, but I don't know. I never want to send that to a client and be like, your CMYK code is like 79.22 magenta.
Round
And
the decimal.
yeah, exactly. But I want to then make sure that I'm giving them that exact code that I was working with. So
Smart.
yeah, it's just something that the first time that it happened to me and I didn't realize that they could even be decimals. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, weird. Like this is either going to be slightly off when I give them the code or I have to type it in to their brand book like this.
I use very specific colors to the fifth
Yeah.
decimal place,
Yes,
okay?
exactly. Yes. No one else will have
Yeah.
your pink, I
Super unique.
promise.
It's all
Yeah.
about positioning, you know?
Hmm. Okay, so I've got a bunch of colors that I'm pretty happy with. I like might end up adding as I'm building through the brand, and I'm like, oh,
Sure.
actually, I need a much darker green or something. Actually, I want to try and get like a muted sage. Oh, that's
That's
actually
pretty.
pretty close to what I was looking for.
You're
I was
amazing.
like,
First try.
oh,
Like, ding.
thanks. I feel like usually that is not the case. Maybe like a little less blue, more green. I don't know. That's kind of gray now. Yeah, well, something like that. Maybe a little darker. I don't know. We'll see as we're working on branding pieces, because that's the thing too, as I'm building out these swatches, usually I'll try and put them like over here, nothing's touching each other, but these colors will interact with each other if they are part of a branding suite. So I have to make sure that they can play nicely together. I do think so. Okay, I think one of my color palettes I'm going to do. Let's just go over here. This is why I just create one giant artboard. Because I
There's room
just
to
wanna,
play.
I
Yeah.
wanna be able to like, okay, that's too much chaos. Let's bring that over here. And also, I don't want to delete anything that I might need later. Like,
Yeah.
let's just copy and paste it over here. We'll pull all the pieces that I need together later. Okay,
J-
so I'm gonna have one palette that is more of a cooler base. So we're gonna go navy for the like black of that one. But this one that has these warmer browns in it, I'm gonna go like a deep brown, like espresso kind of color for my black here. I just don't really like using black and white that often, like pure black and pure
Yeah.
white. I will usually still include like a black and white version of people's logos in their final branding just because, I know people get asked for it from time to time. But yeah, like I think in any color palette, just do like a real dark charcoal gray, a deep espresso, a deep green, a deep navy. I think looks a lot nicer than like black would with these colors, especially if you're having like a lot of blues in your color palette already. Um, just personal preference.
Chat is having a very in-depth fossil conversation. It
Oh my
seems
gosh, let
people
me
are
in. Yeah.
talking about where to find fossils, what kind of fossils they're planning to make. All sorts of things are happening in chat. A
Cool.
little
Amazing.
geocaching.
Love. Okay. So yeah, I'm really liking this stuff up here. And yeah, already this is 7 colors. So wait, I think. Yeah, 7. I can
Yes.
count. So that's 7 colors already. I don't know. It's just hard not to. I'm like, what if they want
You need it.
this color? What if they wanted that color? I don't know. Maybe I don't need this lighter green. Maybe, I don't know. We'll leave them
You
all for
might.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's tough for me to pick. But yeah, a lot of this, I'll do my choices and my choosing, and then we bring it to the client
Yep.
and see what they think about it. This one, like even this, I'm like, I feel like I want a rust in here though.
It could go. Yeah, it could fit.
Like, you know, so now we're up to 8 colors in here. I actually might want this a little bit lighter. I don't know. There's a lot of dark in here.
And so here you're just
A little
checking if
better.
these groupings work well together for the colors and like the contrast,
Yeah,
right? Okay.
exactly. So yeah, I'm getting all my colors together and then I'm going to start like actually putting a few designs together. So yeah, I just wanna, I don't know. And actually, when I'm doing brand design, I go back and forth between that process quite often. Like sometimes I do fully do all of my branding in black and white first
Hmm.
before I ever touch color. But yeah, I don't know. For these, it felt like I guess I have done a lot of the design. Like I did all the illustrations and stuff already. Um, so yeah, I guess I some of it kind of just is working back and forth between things.
So for anyone just joining, Whitney is walking us through a brand design for a small business, which happens to be her parents, which is so cool. So we have some logotype we're working with. We're developing a color palette right now. And we're going to see where it goes from there. And then also, if you have to take off at any point, you can always catch the replay of this on YouTube. So if you have to check out, always check back in and see the final product because this is looking amazing so far.
Thanks. Okay, so I personally love these blues, but I don't know if they are vibing right now for this project. Um, so we're just gonna let these other colors sit down here for a while. Um, this is something that I might come back to later after some of the designs are actually together if I want to try out a few more color combos. But for now, I think I'm just gonna start moving ahead with these colors over here. So yeah, my this two, four, six, eight colors in my palette. So yeah, that's a pretty big one. Like now this teal though is feeling
Like, does it fit? I don't
like,
know.
yeah, but also I think it just needs
It
to be
still
a little
works.
more teal.
Okay,
Like I
yeah, some
think
more
when
color.
it's, yeah, it's too, just a little more saturated maybe. Ooh, no. Because yeah, I think right now it was feeling kind of too close to the cream
Sure.
that I was using. I don't know. I still don't love it with the yellow. I love it with the two greens though. Yeah, we'll work on that. We'll work on that a little bit. We'll workshop it. Okay, so I have what I'm working with for now. Again, might come back and change these later. I'm just going to go ahead and make myself a little swatch folder of these colors. So just select all of those and create a color group with all of my colors in it. I always just like to also rearrange these in a way that makes sense to my brain.
Nice. And so to do this, sorry, you highlighted it and then you right-clicked it to add it to group?
Oh, you probably can. But
Oh,
what
sorry,
I
I wasn't
did,
sure what you did.
no, that's okay. So yeah, just highlight all of the colors that you want to use.
Yep,
And down in your swatches panel, at the bottom of the swatches panel, click on the little folder, and then
gotcha.
that'll let you do a color group. Or you
Perfect.
can also just like pull the colors, like any color that you have highlighted, you can just pull those in as well.
Nice.
Um, so yeah, so I've got my colors there. Okay, what I want to do. So as we said earlier, I've got a couple of these little hand lettered versions. I don't really like this one as much as I like this one, and I feel like they're fairly similar. So I'm just going to go ahead and toss this one away for now. We'll pull that one
Ooh,
off
off
the
the
old
artboard.
artboard. I
Doesn't even
know,
stay on. It's out.
banished. I know. And same with these two. So these ones were basically the same as this, just with a different marker. So I don't need to include those duplicates. I'm gonna hide my ruler.
Little Command R
Um,
shortcut there
yeah,
for
yeah.
your guides. Yeah.
Or command,
Yeah, I was gonna say R is ruler.
yeah, command semicolon or colon is to pull them in and out of
Guides.
view. Yeah.
We love the shortcuts.
But then yeah, command R for that ruler up top. Okay, so I've got these two. I do also want to try out a couple of options that are just like, typed out fonts.
Okay.
maybe things that I will modify later. Just TBD. We'll see. We'll see what I find. Okay, so there were a few. I did a little preliminary research in my font library to see what I was liking. So I have a few that I want to try out. Kind of still this same general vibe. Like I said earlier, I want it to look nice with this really hand-drawn illustration feel. So let's see, Oster was one of them. This one actually, now that I'm looking at it with the illustrations, might be a little bit too clean for my liking, but I'm gonna keep it here. I'm just gonna do a bunch of these and see what I like. It might be something that this doesn't get used for the logotype itself, but I'll need body copy on business cards and stuff like that, and I'm not going to hand letter all of that.
Yeah.
So we'll need some brand fonts anyways. So let's just see what we got here. Arpana was another one. Oh, maybe not. Is that not what it's called? I guess not. I don't.
There's so many times I think I know
Oh,
the
it
font
is.
name, but I'm never actually like reading the font name. You just kind of like
Yes.
glance at it and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
there was an extra letter in
Like
there.
that's not what that was called.
Yep. Oh,
Yeah.
you were right though. There it is.
I know. I don't know. I must have
Who
typed it
knows?
in wrong the first time. So as you can see, like this has a very, very similar vibe to what I drew anyways. Like it's
Cool.
got these little angled pieces. Once I get a few of these typed up, I'm going to start um, modifying them, even just like kerning them out a little bit. Get some nice letter spacing in there. I feel like that's a really, really easy way um, to make something not just feel like you typed it on a piece of paper and said, this is a logo, by doing some just minor tweaks like that.
The
Okay.
finesse.
Mm-hmm. Copper plate was another one. Oops, that's not where I type it. So again, these are all fairly similar, but I just wanted to kind of see some of them all together and see what I like best. I'll probably narrow this down once I get things finalized. I'll narrow it down to a few different options and then let my parents pick what they like best, which is typically what I do in my branding projects anyways. I'll narrow it down to a few options. Um, I might make 5 or 10 options to start just for myself, and then I'll kind of self curate down to a few and then let them choose. Um, Hatch was another one. Mm, don't love this now that I'm looking at it. I don't know, just not exactly what I'm looking for. I love this typeface, but just not for this project. That's so difficult too. I feel like I have go-tos for certain types of projects, but knowing my parents and kind of their style and the vibe of the things that they do, it really truly, as I was going through some of these, I was like, oh yeah, that I love that font, but like it is not right for this project.
That's always so hard.
Hmm.
Someone in chat is saying, I know the font shape, but not the actual name of it. And I think that's very true.
Yeah.
I know what the letter looks like, but I don't know what it's called.
Yes.
And what's your process for picking typefaces? Are you just spending time in your font book? Are you on Adobe fonts? What's your process look like?
Kind of everything.
Yeah.
I definitely check through Adobe fonts. I feel like I have a lot of them synced that like I feel like for each project that I work on, I might sync another like 5 new fonts, but I only use one of them for a given project. So I kind of just go through the ones that I already have that I know I really like and see if they're a good fit for whatever I'm currently working on or not. Um, but yeah, if I'm really like picturing, if I'm like, oh, I want like a curvy, chunky font, I'll just Google stuff
Yeah,
and see what turns up. And but yeah, I definitely will spend time on Adobe fonts, just like browsing my own library, or if I have something specific in mind that I'm looking for, I'll just try and hunt things down that way.
sure.
Okay, maybe just one more of these. Okay, so these, like we said, have a lot of similarities. So I might try just right now to look at these side by side before I even do any editing to them and see if there are ones that I know I can get rid of. I think I was talking about this a little bit earlier, like sometimes I'm just designing in black and white um, to make sure that, like, for my own peace of mind, like, is this a good design? Is this an effective design, even if it was just one color and in black and white? Or does it only look cool because of the colors that I'm using?
Mm,
But sometimes I feel like adding the color in does help you envision it. And it helps me be like, oh, yeah, okay, this is how the design would look in a more completed form. Um, so, yeah, kind of go back and forth on that.
in its
All right.
final form.
Yes. Gonna group this together so I'm not pulling pieces out. Oops, that one too. Pulling pieces out that I don't mean to. Um, okay, so I've got these two. I guess I'm looking for something else that is maybe slightly like you can see it's very clear that I had a style in mind when I was drawing this and when I was looking at other fonts because these all look very, very similar. So I'm gonna try and pick one that is maybe more different than this one. Um, so yeah, maybe I will try like these two. Nah, not that one. I'll try this. I'll give it a whirl. We'll see what happens.
Why not?
I do really like how angular this one is. I think too, so this is an interesting branding project because this logo, the branding will be used for many different things, it'll be used for fossils and like farming and gardening and weaving. And so it'll be appearing at a lot of different places and making sure that it feels like it fits any of those things um, is something that I don't often have to consider even in a branding project. Usually the branding is for one very specific business. But yeah, I think as long as I keep my parents in mind as I'm designing this and what they would like, then it'll fit all of their interests and hobbies too.
We have a question from chat of how do you
Okay.
balance the clean fonts with the hand-drawn, hand-lettered sketches in the final logotype?
Oh, great question. We're actually going to tackle that now.
Look at that.
Yeah, so yeah, I think these are some that I'm going to start working with. We'll pop these banished to the side of the artboard. I might come and address those again later. Okay, so what I'm going to do is start building some of these logotypes, and I'll start with the two hand lettered ones because I feel like that's more fitting to the question that was just asked. So I'm going to take these and do some just little like modifiers, I guess. So like just descriptors of the other things that they do. Okay, let's see. So we want to say like fossils, give a few spaces. I'll maybe just do a few like bullet points in between those. So I'm just going to leave some space, fossils, weaving, um, antiques. Um, for now, I'll just leave it at those three. There are more things, but again, this is something I'll chat with my parents about like, hey, what are the like final things that you want listed on here?
What is
Okay.
Let me
What?
ask you a question. Sorry.
Yeah.
What does the process look like that with or sorry, look for phrasing and things like that with a typical client? Like are you asking them up front, "Hey,
Mhm.
what's your tagline?" Or is that something that you develop as you go?
Yeah, so kind of both. It depends on the client. I do provide or like ask for any of that info up front if they have it. So I always send out a little like brand questionnaire to all of my clients because I'm like, yeah, just whatever info you have, I will take it. Just
All of it.
send me all the word vomit and I will distill it down.
Yep.
I would always rather have too much info than too little. So yeah, I ask for that stuff up front, like what year did you start?
Hmm.
Where are you located? What's your tagline? What are your modifiers? Like what do you call your business if you were describing it to someone else? Um, and if they don't have those things, but they want them, that is something that I'm like, okay, well, yeah, as I'm designing, I'm just gonna put some words in there that I feel like are fitting, and we can workshop them later if need be.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is all pretty client dependent. I don't advertise myself as a copywriter because that feels like a lot of pressure. But I do often help out in those ways, help a brand with their, taglines or however they want to like talk about their business.
I feel like that's such part of being the designer where you're like, what you wanted didn't quite fit right, so I rephrased
Yes.
it. How do you feel
Yeah,
about this?
exactly. Well, especially from the design perspective, like just words fitting in a
Oh yeah.
space. I'm like, oh, so you want it
Important.
to say bar and restaurant, but those two word lengths are so different from each other
Yep.
that anything, like, it's going to be so imbalanced anytime you're like trying to put bar on this side and restaurant on this side. So, yeah, there's a little bit of back and forth. And sometimes they're really stuck on something and it just takes a little bit of creativity to figure out a way to make it feel more balanced, which maybe that's adding in a little uh illustration somewhere to on
Yeah.
the imbalanced side. Yeah. Uh,
It
it
definitely
really just
evolves.
depends.
Yeah.
Yes. That's not how you spell fossils. No.
Chat is wondering if
Okay.
you sent the questionnaire to your parents.
I did not. I feel like I know them enough.
Yeah.
Also, I
Like my whole
just
life,
told them,
so
yeah, yeah. And I mean, I like texted them a little bit
yeah.
beforehand because mostly though, the biggest thing I asked was like, what is it? What are you calling it? Like, what is it called? Because that was something that a few weeks ago they were like, we're not sure what we're going to call it. So yeah, they ended up just being like, you know what? Nothing, no name that we could come up with would encapsulate all of the things that we do. So we're just going to call it our name and then we'll have some additional info around it so that people know what we do. Okay, so right now what I'm doing, I want to make like some kind of little like badge almost or a little oval badge. I think would be nice with all of their modifiers around the edge. So just kind of playing with that right now. I think after I get a couple of these marks made, so I know the original question when I first started doing this was how you work on, or was it like the hand lettered fonts to vibe well with the typed fonts? Was that
Yeah. How are
kind of
you
the gist of it?
balancing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, usually I try to find something that has a bit of character. Like this is even a pretty simple sans serif font, but I really, really like the like reverse contrast in these letters. So the I guess, horizontal strokes are the thicker strokes rather than the vertical strokes, which is typical. And it's even really subtle, but you can tell specifically in the S's, the E's, you can tell that these top and bottom strokes are thicker than the upright. So yeah, I think the key, and other people will have different opinions on this, but I think the key is having something that has just like a little bit of interest to it to pair with a hand lettered font. Um, I also usually opt for something pretty chunky, just from like a balance hierarchy perspective. I like something that, like, I think a thin, delicate font is really lovely, but um, I prefer, and that's just personal preference, something that has a little bit of weight to it. So even this font, I think is, oh, I guess this is just one weight. Oh no, it's not. What weight do I have? I have semi-bold. So this weight, this comes in like tons and tons and
Oh,
tons
wow.
of, like, 18, I think it said.
That's
Um,
nice.
and yeah, I mean, they're beautiful. Like, I think that this extra light, or this, what was it, thin, like, I think this is stunning.
It
But
even has the tiny variations to it
yeah,
still.
oh
It's
yeah,
gorgeous.
yeah, it's lovely. And this is, what was this called? Auster, Auster. And
Amazing.
I'm pretty sure this is an Adobe font.
Ooh, this could
Um,
be yours.
this could be
Go
yours. Like,
activate it.
even the O. Like, do you see
Yeah,
how lovely those little variations on the O and the F are? Like, so pretty.
we're just going to talk
Um,
about our favorite letters now. Let's
Yes,
zoom in.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, that's just, I think this is beautiful. Um, but I think with like the thicknesses and this inky feel
Yeah,
of the illustrations, and if I go with one of the hand lettered fonts, I just feel like something thicker like this balances a lot better with it.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
thank you. Okay. Oh, that's right. That's what I was doing. We're building this badge. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate that. This is one thing that I'm like, I have been doing this way for a long time, but there's probably a better way to do it. Like, I'm like, but this is how I do it.
And here we are.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, I want to pull this so it is on the bottom.
Yeah, typically if I'm doing this or for type on a path, I just do
Yeah.
center line for both. So you can
Oh,
use the same
yeah.
shape and then it'll just keep it. But I don't know if that's
Oh,
necessarily
yeah.
better. I'm sure it has its own
Okay.
flaws, but that's how I would.
So
Yeah.
would that just be like in the align, like in here?
Yeah. You would go,
Oh,
or no, you
horizontally
go,
center line, vertical
yeah,
line.
try it that way. I actually usually go through the tops
Oops.
type
Oh,
panel. Oh,
oh.
but keep going the way you're doing it. I don't
Okay.
want to mess
Okay.
up your flow. We
I
can learn
know.
that trick
Like,
some other
yeah, I'm like,
time.
you teach me that later.
Yep.
You teach me that later. Okay, what else are we gonna put on here? So fossils, weaving, antiques. Um, oh, like old coin. I don't know how he wants to phrase that. The like coin
Vintage
shows.
coins,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
old coins.
Old coins. I might just put coin
Yeah.
shows because like that's the actual like, oh, and then maybe down here I'll put flea market. Markets. It's really stressful to spell things in front of people.
But if you sing, it makes it easier.
It's like I'm like, oh boy. See, this is why I don't usually narrate when I talk because it
No,
just
it's
comes
great.
out in song. Okay, so here's one thing that, I might stick. Now we can start to play with color. So this is just one instance. I'm gonna do, oh, I already made a square down there. It's just waiting. It's just waiting to be filled. Okay, got a few, again, chaos all around us. A few squares here. Oh, I forgot I made my swatch panel. Okay, so we're gonna make that one brown. We'll make
Just
this one, we'll go like a lighter color on this one.
just a quick note for you on time. We have about 20 minutes or so.
Okay. and copy that onto there. For now, since I have this working one down here, I am just going to actually, I'm going to edit this a little bit more before I turn it into outlines. I feel like sometimes when I'm sizing things, when I have things type on a path, sometimes things get weird. So I do always like to have a working version of it. But as I'm scaling stuff and pulling things around, playing with color, I will like hit um, convert to outlines. I think I'm going to make these a little bit bigger though and have a little bit less space in between them. I still think I'll put maybe like a little circle or a bullet like in between, but so yeah, this I consider this like very much placeholder text.
Yeah.
It'll be general, it'll be this, but like maybe slightly different. We'll have a little chat with my parents and see exactly how they want the text in there. Okay, it's maybe a little too big. Let's just do 25. Okay. Um,
Is that the
maybe,
location?
yeah.
I was like, "Ooh, what are we
So,
talking about?" We got
yeah,
Aurora's in the chat.
yes,
Aurora, Illinois. How beautiful.
yeah. So, I don't hate that as it is, but it might also be nice to have a little bit of movement on those Aurora and Illinois. So instead, like there are a few ways that I do this like arced type. So I'll either do type on a path, which is great. Um, Also though, if I just want to see how something will look, um, I might just do it from the effect panel, and it'll look a little different. But if you go up to effect, you have your word or your item selected, and you do warp, and I think that's just arc. I think you can like control how much or how little you're arcing that here. If you have your preview on, you can see as you're doing it. So maybe just a little bit to kind of follow this slight arc of the top. So that says it's at 14%. Yeah, we'll try that. You can also change it later if you realize it's like too much or too little. I'm also going to maybe Hmm. I feel like right now with all of this type being the same size, it's a little bit too much. So I feel like that Aurora and Illinois maybe needs to be a little bit smaller or maybe larger.
One of
We'll
the
see
two.
how it looks. Yeah. Okay. And then again, warp, arc, but we're gonna go the opposite way for this one. So negative, I think it was 15 is what we landed on. Something like that. I'm gonna center it in there. So yeah, for now, I'm gonna play with that a little bit. I do want these to be a little smaller. And then we can pull them back over to the middle. Okay. I do think I also want a version that is not in this badge shape. So we're gonna go, let's see, we can list out our descriptors. Maybe I can do the Aurora, Illinois above. And some of those descriptors below.
Do you have a set number or like a typical deliverable of how many logo variations you deliver to your client, or is it just per project?
So, yeah, I tell people like there will at least be like two, like a logo and then like a smaller, like secondary logo. I get a little just excited about logo variations. So
Generous.
yeah, I feel like most of mine have a set of like 7 to 10
Wow.
pieces that are, this has everything except your location. This has just your name and your illustration, or, just all of the different combinations of pieces that I did for your branding. So yeah, it just depends. It does depend a lot on the brand. I do, um, I feel like for some of the branding packages that I do, they just lend themselves better to more pieces. But yeah, I always guarantee that you'll have like a minimum of 3 logo variations, but it is usually far more than that.
I feel like as a designer, I would be so excited if I got, that many logos all at
Yeah.
once.
I know that it is also like a little intimidating and
I could see
overwhelming
that. For a
too to
non-designer, yeah.
yeah.
What do I do? Which
Yeah,
one's which?
exactly. Right. And like, oh, what do I use this one for? Like, I think it's always great to have like uh some type of horizontal like if you need something for your header of your website, you don't always want like
A
a
circle.
vertical or
Yeah.
a circle, but the circles or the squares are really good for social media icons. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think there's reasons to at least have a couple of versions. I think what I do can be a little excessive for people, but I want people to have options for anything they might need.
And if they're beautiful, I mean, you'd hate for them to just like sit in the file, so why
Yeah,
not?
I'm
Yeah.
like, even if you only put this on a sticker one time, like,
It's worth it.
yeah, exactly. All right, I'm just gonna throw a couple of little bullet points in here.
This is just a circle shape that we're using here.
Yeah. I feel
Perfect.
like I don't know. I don't know if most fonts have a little dot. I feel like
Sometimes,
some of them do, but
yeah.
not always.
Or they're too
And
big and you're like, "Ah, I don't know."
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I feel like I typically just make my own. I don't know. I might play around with spacing more. And I guess I don't need to worry about this too much because I don't even know if this is the exact type that they're going to be using. So I am not going to stress over that too much. I would probably, if I were, like, I feel like this line and this line, I wish there was a little bit more difference between them.
Hmm.
I guess I could just like make one less space here or something, but then it wouldn't be the
On the width
same as
you're
the
saying.
spacing up here. Yeah.
I see.
So like I wish this line was a little bit longer, maybe. I guess, you know what? Let's just see what happens when I make this a little bit smaller, and then I'll make this even smaller yet. Um, yeah, I
A
I
nice
already
shape.
like that more.
Yeah.
I that feels better to my brain. Okay, so this would maybe be something that can go on a business card, this too, whatever. They could go on anything. Let's play with some of our actual brand colors. So we've
Ooh.
got the green here. We've got that. We've got this. Let's see. What do we want on this kind of a rusty color? We could go dark. So that's that like, oh wait, actually,
Almost black color we were
yeah,
using.
I want to use this one instead that has those slightly arced Aurora in Illinois on it.
Oh, good catch. Yeah, I didn't even notice that.
I forgot that that's the thing too, when
We
you
got
have
options.
10 versions of everything, it's like, wait, which was the most updated version of this?
Do I have to
I
look for the
am
right one?
exactly. I am gonna throw these little bullets on here too. Oh, and we need to make them the same color. Oh, but this is
Little
all still black.
eyedropper.
Yeah, that's all still black. That is the thing. I actually often forget to make my own swatches
Mm,
or my like swatch panel, whatever it's called, whatever this
yeah.
is called. And I just eyedropper tool everything. So when I do remember to make one, it is really handy, but I have to get out of that habit of
Right.
just using that dropper tool.
Eyedropper is addictive, man. You do
It
it once, you're like,
is.
gosh, I'll stay for
I
the color. Why
know.
would I not?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I'm just gonna go ahead and we're gonna duplicate these, put them down here so that I know it, that I have still the working files. And I'm just gonna outline all of this. So Command Shift O will turn all of that stuff into outlines. Then I don't have to worry about things skewing or scaling in a weird way. Um, as I, resize stuff. And then
Smart.
I'm just going to do that with this too. Command Shift O to make all of my fonts outlines. Okay. And then I was going to change this back into that espresso color. I also kind of want to see what these will look like with maybe just like a white. Don't love that, but that's okay. It can have the little, that one. No, just kidding. I don't like that. Okay. So now that we've got a couple of little brand marks here, I would also just deliver like this logotype as its own thing if they, wanted stuff without all the modifiers on it as well. Okay, so what I want to do is make a little pattern out of some of my pieces over here. So I'm going to give myself some space. And we're going to make a pattern together really
Wow.
quick that
In our
I
last five
can.
minutes here.
Yes, I
Amazing.
know. It's okay. This tool, again, I was sitting here hand building um, all of my patterns. And then I think I actually did learn this from like someone else's Adobe Live segment. Um, but that you can really, really easily create a pattern. And I'm like, okay, let's go. Okay, so I'm just gonna grab a couple more of these.
Are those little gourds as well? Or they look like little
They are.
garlic?
So these ones are garlic, yeah, but there
Okay.
are little gourds right next to them.
So fun.
I just want to have a couple of small things because I feel
Yep.
like when you are making a pattern, it is really helpful to have some small stuff with you too. Okay, so I'm gonna go in here. I've got my pieces of my pattern selected. Let's see. I think it's under object. Yeah. So wait. Is it? Yeah. Image trace
Pattern
pattern.
link.
Yeah, that is it. I'm like, there's more to this. Okay. So what I do usually, I like to, this lets you build in a few different ways. So each piece, each tile that you're working on, you can go grid, brick by row, brick by column, hex by column, or hex by row. I like doing hex by column or hex by row. I feel like they just, to me, they look better when I'm building them. I feel like it gives a little bit more of a um, seamless look to it. So as you can see here, the tile that I'm working on is this like solid black, and everything else is grayed out a little bit, but it does give you a preview of how it will look. So all you do is you start moving around your pieces, and I can see how it will lay with the other stuff that I already have on here.
Do you have any tips for if it should, exceed the boundary that it's showing you or stay within that? Is there a particularly helpful approach there?
Oh, I feel like I usually exceed it,
Okay.
just because I don't know. I feel like usually when I'm designing, that just ends up working better for me. You can also play with the scale of your items in here too. So, you can scale them all at once as I'm doing right now. Or if you just need to make one thing larger or smaller, you can see that that is happening like in real time too. So I love giving a brand a custom pattern. I think it's a really cool asset for brands to have. You can throw that on tissue paper if you order custom made tissue paper. You can throw it really on anything. I like to put it on maybe like the back of a, oops,
No, our pattern.
I know.
It'll be there.
Yeah. Shape, pattern, make. Um, mm, mm, mm. Oh,
Oh, will it be there?
oh, maybe I not, I maybe didn't have it selected.
Come back pattern.
Yeah, there we go.
Oof. All right.
Okay. Okay.
Back to
Okay.
row by
Yeah,
column
I'll
or X
finish
by
this
row.
up so that I can show you how it looks finished. I guess, yeah, I'm not gonna fully finish this, but we're just gonna say that it's finished so that you can see the final piece. Um, okay. This is gonna make me cringe just having to
You can do this.
do it like this. Okay. I can do it. I believe in myself. Okay. We'll say it's done. There's some spaces I would take care of. But we will say that it's done. Oops. Okay. Ugh. So close out of that. So I now have a pattern in my swatch. It automatically creates a little swatch for you.
Amazing.
And if you make yourself a little shape and fill it with that, you have this seamless pattern that now you can just make large shapes. So if you, like I said, if you wanted to create custom tissue paper or whatever else, you've got your little custom pattern here. So something that I would do maybe for this specific brand is go like this, throw a little square behind there, and then I could, nestle this right in there, or I could change it to a white so it could pop out right on top. So maybe this would go on top of their business card or something. Um, I just like to give these little pieces of print collateral. You never know what branded touch point someone might want to have. So I just like to keep the options open.
That looks amazing. All right. Well, we're in our final moments here. So if you want to maybe zoom out and show us the
Yeah.
beautiful artboard that we have here, but this has been such a
Oh,
wonderful stream. You've done
thank
amazing
you.
work. Yeah. So you did, or do you want to walk us through it? You did logo, you did
Sure.
patterns.
Yeah. So we selected our colors, we selected our fonts, we made a pattern with some of these hand-drawn illustrations that we vectorized using a combination of Photoshop and Illustrator. And then yeah, we made some brand marks here too.
That looks great. Well, Whitney, you've been a wonderful guest. Make sure to go check out her work at Whit & Co. But thank you so much for spending the time with us and showing us how to do all this. Stick around if you're watching Adobe Live. Up next is a spotlight interview with Andrew and Codone, I believe. So stick around and don't miss out on that. But thank you so much for joining, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.